You're listening to the Personal Development Through Martial Arts podcast, the podcast where the world's highest personal development experts and martial arts masters come together to empower and inspire you to become your strongest self and live the life that you truly want. Join host Bogdan Rosu, author, public speaker, and the founder of the first personal development through martial arts school in the world, in the podcast where you become the hero. Hey guys, I'm here with Sifu Martin Brogaard, and I'm very excited because we're talking about how to make your Wing Chun basics functional and fun. Because a lot of people get very enthusiastic about learning the wooden dummy, learning the knives, learning the dragon pole, and forget about their basics. Sifu Martin, how are you? How's your Monday?
I'm great. My Monday is great. Just busy, but great.
Awesome. For the people, I know that you do a lot of your lives on the Wing Chun news page, but for the people who don't really know you, tell us a bit about yourself, how you started your Wing Chun journey before we actually dive into the information on how people can improve their the basics.
I started in martial art when I was 10 due to temper problems, actually. I had a little problems in school, and my dad thought it was a good idea to start with martial arts. So I started out on the very basics on jiu-jitsu, and then I constantly tried to find something that was realistic. So then I went to karate. I was also for a period. I was very young, so my ability to know what was good martial art or less good martial art was, of course, limited to my state of mind and my experience. So then I did some kung fu, more traditional shaolin kung fu, and then I did Thai boxing for a while, and I ended up with Wing Chun in 1993, and then I did Leung Teng Wing Chun for approximately 14 years, and then the whole school changed. It was actually the largest school in the world. We had more than 1,000 Wing Chun members, and I think we had approximately 28 or 30 instructors. So it was a really big school. And I trained there, and when I learned the full system, then there was like something lacking. We started turning to Wong Song Leung Wing Chun.
I'm having a deja vu because we had this conversation for our first interview together.
Exactly. So and then I actually did a round trip in China in 2007, where I trained with a lot of different masters, and then I ended up with Sifu Martin Brogaard, which is my Sifu right now, and he's been my Sifu since then. So the last 11 years, actually it's 11 years now. So it's been a great journey. It's a different style. It's really interesting the way it's aligned with modern biomechanics, but still have all the principles and philosophy from the ancient Wing Chun history. So it's really beautiful.
How did you find, what do you feel is the difference between the basics in Ling Wing Chun, for example, and in Wang Kam Wing Chun?
Well, let's start with what we have in common. I think that's better. So
I like that. Yes.
Every Wing Chun system have these things in common. We all talk about the forms, Sin, Sao, Tam, Kyu, Beauty. Then you have the dummy, then you have the pole and the knives. So that is the same. Yes. We also all refer to the old the doctrines, the old sayings of Wing Chun called the Kunkits. We're talking about like Kyun Yao Sampa, Lek Yao Tele, or all these sayings that is principles for tactics or strategies or even methods that we interpret from. So we just interpret it differently depending on who's the Sifu. So the lineage of let's say Wang Kam Leung is a little different because he was a Wong Song Leung student, and he was doing his own approach, and he had to travel around in China learning qigong, and he was looking for this very practical approach to qigong. Yes. And by that, he also met a lot of different other martial artists. If you're looking for practical qigong, you will find practical people. So he's been inspired by all kinds of martial artists, and he has integrated his qigong into his Wing Chun, and of course, then the Wing Chun has evolved from there. So it's a modified, and to me, it is an improved version of the Wing Chun that we know of, at least the one that is generally known today.
And
yeah.
Do you feel like you went into Wing Chun with a different attitude towards training your basics? I mean, having such an extensive background. And by the way, guys, if you want to listen to our first interview together where we dive deeper into Sifu Martin's origin story, let's say, how he started out with Wing Chun, what were his, and with martial arts in general, what were his biggest lessons? Go ahead and search for us on iTunes or just Google the Personal Development Through Martial Arts podcast. Do you feel like you had a different approach towards training your basics, having such an extensive martial arts background?
Well, the very biggest difference to me is that practical Wing Chun is easy to apply when you are training with people from all other kinds of styles. That doesn't matter if they're distance fighters, or they are close combat fighters, or even if they are grapplers. So even if they are like the kickers or the strikers, it's very easy to use it on any kind of distances and any kind of approach, because it has a different way of adapt. The adaptability is different, but actually a lot is different. The way we stand, the way we walk around, the way we move, the way we turn, the way we punch, the way we kick, the way we interpret techniques, strategies, tactics, everything is different. Like when you look into a modern engine of a brand new Bugatti, it's a lot different from when you look into an engine of an old car. I'm not saying that the Yongting system is an old car. It's a different engine. Let me say it like that.
Yeah, I met some Yongting practitioners who were unbelievably powerful in their Wing Chun. And I agree, it's just a different type of language, a different engine. Well, what I was curious to find out was, were you training more, or were you emphasizing more on your basics when you started training practical Wing Chun, or were you like very enthusiastic of learning more and more and more?
I think that the thing is that whenever you learn anything, you have to have the same approach. We have to start with the technical part.
Okay.
Actually, at very first, you have to understand the theory. If you don't understand the theory, it makes no sense starting with the technical part. And when you're turning it into the technical part, the first part of the technical part should not be with even an opponent. It should be like form or any kind of training where you combine different movements from the form with footwork. It's about relaxation, it's about precision, it's about coordination. So that it's not really about the other person, it's about controlling your own body. When that is in, it doesn't matter which kind of kung fu you're doing, it's the same. And when that is in, then you're looking at distance training. Yes. And distance training starts with precision. That's like, how do you position yourself compared to an opponent? And that will smoothly go into things with a static target, not moving, looking at closing distance, keeping distance, or making distance, and then gradually moving that into a moving target where a lot of timing is included. But if you don't go that way, the timing is going to be off, because if you don't even know how to position yourself against that static target, a moving target is going to be impossible. Let me give you an example, like a analogy. If you learn shooting, first you will learn how to hold the gun and position yourself. Then you will start hitting at a close target. The target is then going to be moved back to a certain distance where it makes it a little more difficult. You have to be even more precise. And after that, you're going to slowly start moving the target, slowly. And then eventually you can start moving and doing a lot of different things and have different and maybe more targets coming up. But it's a slow process of learning how to shoot. You can't just start by having moving targets. Then you're going to hit nothing.
But people will say, yeah, but I'm going to get the machine gun and hit everything, and maybe I'll hit the target too.
But that's the funny thing. The funny thing is that if you have a machine gun, it's going to shoot a lot, but it's not necessarily going to hit a lot.
Yes.
And the thing is, once you are close to an opponent, if you can't point the gun at the direction of the target, it doesn't matter how many shots you can shoot.
Yeah.
And that brings the next part into it, because once you have learned about distance, you will learn about adaptability. And when we're looking at adaptability, it's the ability to change, it's the ability to be fluent, it's the ability to have agility, the ability to change angles and motion according to the circumstances, like suddenly and swift.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the forms are structured that way, right? Because in the first form you're just being static, you have your static target, and then in the second form you learn to hit a moving target, and you learn to move yourself as well.
I think that the original idea of Studentau was that you were standing actually and doing the movement on your preferred distance, which is you have one preferred distance where you can hit him in the head, and you are learning to really learn your nervous system to control that distance. And once you have that distance, then you start moving in and out of that distance, but you will always compare any other distance to that distance because that's your preferred distance. Like a kicker would probably know his kicking distance and choose that if was his preferred distance. A boxer is going to be right out of range, moving in and out of that, choosing his preferred distance. The grappler is going to bring him to the ground into his preferred distance. Now, our preferred distance is the distance where we can touch the other guy, either by hitting or by trapping or controlling his movements. In that way, that distance has to be cultivated first. And that's in Studentau.
Yes, I love that. How do you remind your students to go back to their basics?
Well, I think when you teach, well, this is just for me. You always in the beginning when you start the class, you usually start with form, just bringing them mind-wise and body-wise into this pattern of movements, which is the Wing Chun pattern. Whatever they have done through the day, they're getting into that. And after that, this is just my way of teaching. I'm getting some pads out and I start having them punching. And the reason is that I want them to punch like a Wing Chun person, and I want them to punch like a normal striker. So when we start doing drills, they already have the ability to walk and move and punch, so they can give you a realistic feed when you want to do your technical training or their distance training with a partner. So they have to learn how to hit a target before they even start, hitting you. And when you have tuned in, first you tuned into form, then you tuned into distance and target, then you can go to the technical part. And on the technical part, you always start with the basics. And when you have trained a little bit on the basics, then you start variation. And that is depending on your progression. What is the theme that you want to work on? But you want to start with the basics, go to the theme. And then the theme that you're working on, then you have to know, am I learning here? Because then you can ask a lot of questions. And or am I just practicing? That's just a lot of repetition. And that's not testing. I think that's maybe the biggest problem when you're learning stuff, is that people, they get confused. They mix up. One person is trying to learn something and the other one is testing him. So he's not really learning.
Yeah.
There's these three areas. First you learn, then you train, and then you test. So learning is having somebody better than you explaining things. Training is having somebody similar level than you and training it until it becomes natural. Testing is seeing if you can do it under pressure. But you should not, when you're trying to get it natural in your body, you should not test then. It's not like learning how to drive a bike. You're just learning. You don't put them out in the traffic. You have them in the safe environment until they are in control. And then you can put out and test. So, and I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of training, and also why we actually lose a lot of members or people when we're training. And it's not just in Wing Chun, in martial art in general, is that you are testing people who are not ready for testing. They should learn, then train, and then test. Yeah. And when they can do it naturally and they're tested and they feel like they have it in well control, then they are competent to a degree that they're ready to learn the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this time spent in defining the the space that we were discussing before, the space that you learn, learning your space, learning your emotions, and learning how to move and use your footwork. If you just rush it, I feel that as a practitioner, you lose a lot of what could be your power of punching power,
Of course.
speed, just being able to move around and dodge very powerful techniques, and everything shows, right? All of that shows, all that lack is so apparent when you're just jumping from instead of spending more time on the wall bag, for example, or just on the basics of the dummy. You rush into learning Popeye hams, or you want to learn Chizao, or jump into learning the knives or the Dragon Ball. It's just like there's no foundation to it, right?
Yeah.
How often?
I think that the way that we make it interesting as teachers, or we help people find it interesting. The first thing is, while we are teaching, there's certain things we have to know to get them to feel that it's a fun and fun to do the basics, right?
Yeah.
The first thing is there's a way in teaching that's called what, why, how, and that is just what are we gonna do, why is it so important, and then how it's done.
Yes.
If you want them to listen, you gotta put the why before the how. So you explain why is this so important, then they start listening. So if you say, okay, now we're gonna do something about timing or distance, or we're gonna do something about the footwork, about stability and mobility. That is isolating something to integrate it later on.
Yes.
So you also always want to start with the end in mind. Now I want you to be able to move like this, and you do something that is where they say, wow, they get an impression on how you can move, and then you say, but we're going to break it down to this element, and then you do something with maybe with stability and mobility, or distance work, and then you integrate it in afterwards, and then they feel the effect. But if they don't see the big why before they do the how, then they won't be motivated to work as hard.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that, and you find that in anything, not just in teaching martial arts, but in whatever you're teaching. Maybe you're trying to teach your kids how to ride a bicycle, right? You're going through the same process.
Yeah, yeah. Show them some fun stuff you can do with a bike, and then say, okay, what did I actually do here? And then you break it down and show them a little thing they train on, and to integrate it afterwards. So yeah. So I think then when people teach, the thing is that if they start by setting the scene, like saying, okay, this is the scenario, this is the specific situation. You are here, he's there, his intention is like this. Now, what am I going to do? So you first set the scene. When you have the scene set up, then you can go in and say, okay, then I'm going to be doing this. And then you show them, they want a visual. And then you explain it so they hear it auditory. Some people learn better that way. And then they practice.
Yes.
Yeah, but when show, explain, and then practice. When you practice, it's about getting into your nervous system, and especially if you have anything of tactile, where you touch, you really need to have seen it, heard it, and then felt it. They gotta feel. I think a lot of instructors they just let people do it, but they have to go and touch hands with them and let them feel how it's supposed to feel.
You read my mind.
It's easier for them.
You read my mind, because that's exactly what I wanted to say, that it's absolutely crucial that when you're explaining the why, you also allow them to feel what you mean, that expression of the idea. Like, for example, in the beginning,
exactly.
What I love to do with new people coming into school is just show them the lap sao, the lap da, but I do it in a very fast, like a small shock, right? And that feeling sticks with them forever, because they never feel something like that. They never felt something like that before. And I think it's unbelievably important that when you're teaching anything, whether it be basics or just more advanced concept, that you need to involve feeling, right? Because feeling is believing.
Yeah, it is. I think knowing all the time that people are there and they are there because they're motivated.
Mm.
And the best way to motivate people is to inspire people.
Yeah.
People can be motivated by two things: either they're away from something, or they're towards something. And it's always best to have them towards something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they might come to your class out of fear,
yes,
but it should be the inspiration that runs it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Are you familiar? I'm not sure where I read this. I think it was in David Peterson's book, but Wong Sun Long said that you're only going to use the first 10 motions in the wooden dummy in a fight. So those are the most frequent motions that you ever need or you're ever going to use in an actual fight. So he really loved working on the basics. How do you feel about that? Or what do you think about that?
Well, we have in the Sifu Martin system, it's a little different. Everything is a little different. So the whole approach to the dummy is different from his teacher's approach. Though still the first third of the movement, the part of the first third of the movements there are of course the most likely one to be applied. And that's the same in the dummy. It's also in the rest of the system. The students how stuff is what most likely to be applied.
Yes.
Then Tamkyu, and then BOG. So a lot of people have the tendency of finding BOG to be some great, amazing thing. Saying, yep, it's the things which is hopefully you're not going to be using. It's the least likely to happen.
Yeah.
And it's usually because the stuff works. So you need to learn it, but first when you master the rest of it, you always have to look at your press. I think we talked about this last time, and I think it's so important. The ladder of competence. What you need to work on is the basics.
Yes.
And once the basics has become, you are unconscious competent. You just do it. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. Then you go to the next thing. You don't stay on it. So, and that's not in our culture. In our culture, we just want the next thing. That actually it's the amount of training you put into the basics that makes the biggest difference. There's actually a saying that goes like this. I heard it from a great friend of mine, and if you should interview anybody that I find super interested with, have a super depth in Wing Chun understanding outside my own system, it's Jesper Lundqvist. I'll give you he's a great Kung Fu master. He told me recently, we were talking about this stuff. Once in a while we hook up and discuss and share knowledge, and he said this thing about if the technique is wrong, you can still win, but if the power is wrong, you cannot. So you have to learn. It's not about using power. It's about knowing how to work with that energy. If you know how to work with the energy, with that power, then you might do a technique which is not the ideal in the situation, but you can still win. But it doesn't matter if you do the ideal techniques, but if you don't have the right energy behind it, it doesn't matter. It's just move.
It's so funny because this actually sums up my weekend. Because on Saturday I had a one-on-one training session with one of my students. He did another type of Wing Chun style, right? So let's say that he kind of jumped the basics, exactly what we were discussing, because his secondary motions like lap, pak, he had a notion of doing them, so he could go in, break the guard, but when he did go in, exactly what you mentioned, like his expression of energy, of giving power, of hitting, was non-existent, right? He would just push you over, so it just had no effect. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, it doesn't matter if you have very good lap sao, pak sao, bong sao, or whatever. If you cannot express power when you need it, then you're in trouble. You're gonna be in trouble. in the following day, like yesterday, I had another conversation with another student of mine who was addicted to video games, and we were talking exactly about this idea that we got so used to immediate rewards, right? You want that reward immediately, and it's very difficult today to motivate yourself for that long term reward that training the basics actually gives you.
Yeah. I think if you do, like my son, he's playing Counter Strike, and he spends a lot of times on this practice on headshots, uh, and he spends a lot of times trying to understand the strategies and the tactical things, and that's why he's improving a lot faster. He's not just trying constantly to test out things. He's trying to understand it, and he's practicing those basics. And even in a video
That's
game,
very
I
nice.
think you will find great value in these things.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it depends on ultimately what you're doing it for, right? If you have like a strategy or
Yeah,
a long-term strategy, then the right things will fall into place. Like, okay, I want to become very good at Wing Chun. I'd better train my
yeah.
basics. Dun-dun-dun.
I think you are actually at the essence of it. Why are people training?
Mm,
Now, if I have a guy coming in and he actually want to do Wing Chun because he want to go into the cage and fight somebody,
mm,
maybe his way of training should be an additional training to being in a cage, and the
yes,
way he trains should be different from
yes,
somebody who want to train for self defense. And the one training self defense, his training also has to be a little different from somebody who just want to learn the art because they are inspired by the art of kung fu, or it was inspired by the art of Wing Chun. So, and maybe a bouncer or a doorman or
yeah,
any kind of security guard of any kind, maybe police people, even military people. All these people have different rules. They have a different setting. They have a different mindset. They have a different objective, and so their training has to be different. The only thing that's the same is uh, is principles and tactics, which can be related into any of those principles, and those strategies can be related into anything, no matter what you do, as long as it's practical,
hmm
as long as it's for use, not just for show. Then the training will still be different. That's why when you train with somebody, it's important that you have a similar goal.
yes, yes, absolutely
And
agree.
that can be difficult in a classroom, of course, because a lot of people with different aims.
And I think like the biggest illusion that once that people have in the beginning when they're saying, okay, oh my God, I have to do the form again. It's not like you're doing the same form because it's another day, it's another form, it's a totally new expression. So it's a totally new opportunity for you to learn. Just like one day is not the same with the other, even though you might be doing the same tasks, but you're doing it from a different perspective. So, in my opinion, if you do your training with this question in mind, what is my opportunity, or what can I learn new about myself or about Wing Chun today through this motion? Because they're all different. They're all teaching you something new.
Mhm. So I think that form, people, they have that tendency. There's two ways you can be too absorbed by form.
Mm,
In that
interesting.
way that you are that you lack the training on the application
Yes.
of
Yes.
energy. You can also be too little absorbed with form,
hmm
that you are so concerned with uh, working with the energy and the power and the distance and timing that you're. But the thing is that the form is is the whole foundation of everything. It's the way that you interpret force. So this thing about working with force, you can only work with a force you can interpret, and you can only interpret a force if you have something which for you is right or wrong.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So they have to be, yes. Form, to me, form should be done every day. It
Mm.
doesn't have to take you forever, but it should be a natural thing that you do every day. So all the movements of the system becomes more and more natural to you, like
Mm.
brushing your teeth.
I love that. We have a couple of questions. Let's see
Yeah.
if we can address them. Wait is asking, what should a karate person eat? Well, it's like what a karate person needs to eat, but I think that's what he means.
Well, let's call the guy who's going to be eating. What do you need to eat for within your karate?
Yes.
And let's say that karate is just a Japanese martial art. You're just a martial artist like anybody else, but what do you need it for? Mm-hmm. Do you need it for practice, or do you need it for competition? What is that thing about what you eat? What kind of practice are you going to do? Mm-hmm. If you're going to do a lot of technical practice, it's different compared to if you want to do a lot of physical practice. But the way that we eat is a lot the same, no matter what kind of sport you're doing. It's just for how long time do you have to have endurance, right? So how much sugar do you need to have? You don't need to have a lot of protein in your system. It's just going to make you heavy. But you do need to have sugar available. Usually you have sugar enough for short bursts of energy. But if you need longer times of longer bursts of energy, you need to have more sugar in your system. And by sugar, I do not mean sugar like sugary drinks, but carbohydrates. That means which is stored in your liver and in your muscles, so you have energy enough for the full training. The most important thing in general when you train is if you train a semi-intensity, you can if you just wait an hour after you have eaten, you can do semi-intensity. If you do high intensity, you want to have like 2 or maybe 2.5 hours after you have eaten before you do it, because you don't want to have food in your stomach trying to be digested at the same time as you are doing high intensity work.
Yeah, I love that. So basically the why determines the how and the what.
Exactly.
I love that.
That's why we always start with the why. Is that what are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? And then we go to the how.
Nice. Tahir is saying, I want to learn. Can you help? Absolutely, Tahir. Sifu Martin has a ton of videos posted online on the Wing Chun news page. Go ahead and watch his live videos. And it's the same, I think.
I have one thing for that. The 1st of March, if everything turns out as planned, I'm starting out an online academy where people pay for something like 13 euros a month. They can go in, and there's going to be videos on every topic, on theory, on the technical part, on the distance work, on the adaptability work, on the physical training, functional physical training. So all the things that are going to be videos. And every month, there's going to be added new videos on all topics. So people, they can go in, and no matter where they are in their experience, they can work on basics or a little more advanced. It's going to be primarily videos in the beginning for the fundamentals, but in all categories anyway. So people, they get good fundamentals, as we're talking about, is so important.
I love that. And I love to see that more and more Sifus are getting on online teaching. And I think it's a real opportunity for everyone who wants to train Wing Chun, for everyone who wants to, get in touch with their physical power, their emotional power as well. And welcome to the club.
Yeah, to the future. And the thing is that they need to do it low cost, high quality. No matter what style, no matter low cost, high quality. So, because then we're going to reach further out there. It should not be about money. It should be able to pay for the whole academy thing, but it's not about that. Low cost, high quality. If people want more, they will come. But give them the opportunity to get all the fundamentals right from the beginning. That's the most important. I think that's what we need to do. We need to help people getting the fundamentals in order.
Yeah. And in my experience, teaching online, it's never going to be the same as being in a physical school, but it's still always going to be better than just sitting around and wishing you were doing something about it, right? So
but if you can see it a little like this, we can do 3 kinds of ways of training. An online academy can have the purpose of supporting 3 kinds of groups. You can have your own normal academy and being a Sifu like yourself, and then you can have some online academy to support your students to look at.
Yes.
You can also be an instructor who is maybe doing a different kind of martial art, and then he starts your Kung Fu. And because he want to start your Kung Fu, he will have a group he's teaching, and then he needs, besides, he might meet up with you once in a while. Either you come to his school or he will come to your school. He might also come from a country where that's not possible. Then he will be able to go in there and take knowledge from there, and he can give it to his students. The third thing is a training group. That means that somebody there's no teacher, but they're a group of people. They're a guy, I want to learn this stuff. Okay, so I go in there, I see the information, I find a group of people, and I train with them. And then, of course, you cannot take them. You can learn them all the basics, and they can work with that. But if they want to go further, you have to somehow be able to, as an instructor or trainer, to evaluate what they're doing. Either that you do it by like Skype, like we're on Skype right now. You can have a Skype meeting with a big screen, and then if you have somebody there to train to show with, and they have somebody there, you can watch them and you can tell them what they're doing. They won't get the tactile, but as an instructor, you will see how most of it on that level, you'll be able to see, and you can correct them while you're there, as long as you also have a person there. So there's two people on each side of the screen.
I think
that is one way.
In 10 years, maximum, I think it's a lot, 10 years, maybe in like 5 or 6 years, a lot of people are going to be learning Kung Fu through virtual reality in VR.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Even if you show up to a great seminar with this great master, it's not likely you're going to be spending a lot of time touching the person's arms anyway.
No, exactly.
So,
exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
And then you could just as well have done it in your living room with a friend, watching it on a big screen.
And that's like in 20 years, we're going to get you're going to buy a USB that says Wing Chun Kung Fu, and you're going to stick it in the back of your head, and you're going to be able to do Wing Chun.
I hope not. I like the idea of when the hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that if you don't have the right mindset, you won't really get it.
I think
so. You don't get the wrong people doing it.
You know what? I think that meditation is going to be huge in the future because we're getting so distracted with technology that we forget to be mindful and present. And I think that's going to be a very, very big thing. And that's also like a huge part of training. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I think within martial art, it will not be as much meditation as it will be neigong. Neigong in Chinese just means internal training. And for example, qigong, that means that it might be a meditative practice. But it will be something which is supporting your martial art, but still giving you the same benefits as meditation, and even more because you're not just balancing and stabilizing and making yourself calm, but you're also loading up inside energy that you then can use and distribute in your body the way you want.
Absolutely, awesome. And yeah, I think that's where we're heading towards. Okay. Sifu Martin, thank you so much for your time, for joining in on another interview. It was really fun talking. And,
there's no final questions from anybody.
Yeah, it was like we just have a couple of questions. I think everybody's sleeping right now. Because most people are in the US. But Tahir and Vitis, thank you so much for your questions. Let us know if we did answer them. And if you have any more questions, just type another comment and tag us in your comment, and we'll do our best to answer them in text. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Likewise, guys. If you want to listen to the whole interview or to tune in to Sifu Martin's first interview on our podcast, go ahead and search for the Personal Development Through Martial Arts podcast. My name is Bogdan, and I help you guys raise your self-confidence through personal development and martial arts so that you raise your quality of life and you become more happy, healthy, and more abundant. And I'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Okay guys, thank you so much for listening in. I hope this was super valuable for you. And also, to get notified every time I post a new video on this YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to have unstoppable self-confidence without seeming arrogant, there's a link in the description where you can download the free report. And if you want me to personally help you with your martial arts training so that you get more speed, power, precision, stability, and have a deeper understanding of your body, you go ahead and you check the link for our online academy, which you will find, of course, in the description. And please go ahead and give us a rating on iTunes. It does help and it is very much appreciated. I'll see you next time.